Hello and welcome to Destination Draft Day, your one-stop shop for all things pro football, college football, and NFL draft. Today we are going to be talking about the edge rushing class of the 2022 NFL draft. Obviously, last episode we talked about the interior defensive linemen, some guys that kind of overlap in that section. George Karlaftis, DeMarvin Leal. Obviously, they could be considered edge rushers. They're probably going to be 4-3 defensive ends at the NFL level. But, for me personally, I count them as defensive linemen just because of that ability to move inside as compared to if you're to ask them to stand up, I think there'd be some issues. So they aren't going to be on today's episode. We talked about them last episode. If you want to check that out on the Chris Landry YouTube channel or in the history for the Chris channel Twitch. But for today, we're going to be talking about the edge rushing class, and there is plenty of exciting prospects in that regard. But first and foremost, going to welcome in co-host Nick Durst. Nick, how are you doing on this Friday?
You say Friday? I wish it was Friday, but it's only
Monday. Wow.
Get the weekend on your mind. I'm doing well here. We're really getting a lot of stories out of training camp here. And the typical fan bases are getting wild and whatnot. The Jets, they had this green-white game, and apparently Zach Wilson was really bad. He was like 12 for 21, 2 interceptions, and he also almost threw another pick, but it was dropped. What do you say, Michael, to these fan bases who in August here are worrying about the draft picks without seeing them even play a game?
I understand it a little bit. You always want to see your draft picks kind of fire out immediately and just start dominating camp, whether it's having a great performance or just showing off some great arm talent. But a lot of issues are going to happen, especially for younger players. But, I just think it's something that you should remain optimistic about. Just hope that the original evaluation continues to prevail.
All right. And on the injury front of things, Will Lutz injured for the Saints. Not easy to replace a kicker that is semi-good. So we'll see what the Saints do here on August 9th on a new kicker. And Ronnie Stanley was back for the Ravens after he had a serious ankle injury last year. And also back from the PUP list was Saquon Barkley, who had his first practice today. So definitely a good sign there for both of those teams.
Absolutely. Getting key pieces back is huge. Saquon Barkley, Ronnie Stanley, very crucial pieces for both teams' success. So ultimately, any healthy player is a good thing, but having superstars back and ready to start is huge, especially now as compared to, getting them back in the middle of the regular season or something like that.
No doubt about it. And the other thing, I saw there is a big story out that I want to get to, but Deshaun Watson, he was in camp, he was practicing today, and who knows what that means. So then he's there and he's not going anywhere. So we shall see. And then Michael Thomas had a tweet go out today. I don't know if you saw this. He said they tried to damage your reputation. You saved theirs by not telling your side of the story. It's obvious that he wants out of New Orleans. He does not want to be there. He's trying to send these messages here on Twitter.
Yeah, it's a weird situation there. Michael Thomas, obviously one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. I thought he was in for a big year. The injuries and then now this makes it very questionable. Definitely a shaky situation for the Saints that already have a lacking wide receiver group as it is. And with Michael Thomas potentially being out with the injury and then potentially having these issues, it's going to be a weird year for that Saints offense. A lot of Kamara and Troutman touches.
Yeah, and the other thing you see is that the big star of the Justice saw an article come out that said, so you believe that Aaron Rodgers will sign with the Saints next season. I don't know if you saw that. What do you think?
I think, talent-wise, that'd be absolutely phenomenal for both sides. I think the Saints have a really tremendous offensive line and defensive unit. I'm not sure how the money would work, but Loomis just seems to make that happen nonstop, where he just pushes money down the road and makes it work. So I'm sure he'd figure it out. But, if Rodgers does end up the Saints QB, then I think that would work out well. I do have hope for Winston to find some success there working with Sean Payton, though.
And then the contract front, Darius Leonard gets a big extension, and Xavier Howard got a reworked deal for at least this year. So he won't be going anywhere at this point.
Yeah, absolutely crucial pieces. Darius Leonard, I think, is one that gets a lot of love around the NFL, and I think it's warranted. I don't think he's in the top 5 of linebackers in the NFL, but I still think he's a very good, very young, talented linebacker that absolutely deserved the payday. And, I think the Colts really hit on a lot of these draft picks that we're going to now see how they manage that money while trying to figure out the QB side of things for themselves as well.
Yeah, a lot to do there. And then we could also to say rest in peace to Bobby Bowden. Quite the legacy in college football. And if you look around college football right now, a lot of coaches were impacted by him.
Absolutely. I think he is one of the biggest legacies in college football, at least as far as coaching goes. And what he did at Florida State and just overall in his career was phenomenal. And rest in peace to an icon of college football.
Yep. And then over the weekend, Michael, we had the Hall of Fame induction ceremonies for the class of 2020 and the class of 2021. I'm sure you're locked in the takeaways from the weekend.
Yeah, I mean, obviously very deserving players that got into the Hall. A lot of these are guys that I was able to watch as a kid, so it's kind of cool to start to get into this phase where we're seeing some of the guys that I grew up on watching, and, it's just very exciting to see a lot of these legends really start to be honored. But, yeah, I mean, it was a long time coming for some of these guys, and for some of these guys, they earned it as quickly as they got it, so absolutely congratulations to them, and there's not much else to say on my end.
Yeah, and the other thing was that I believe I saw that the president of the Big 12 has now been removed from college football playoff committee. So a committee which really doesn't give much love to them outside of Oklahoma. Things just got a lot worse for the Big 12, and we'll have to continue monitoring here, seeing what eventually happens to that conference.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where best case scenario seems just merging with the American Athletic Conference. But even with that, the question arises, does the American Athletic Conference really fill in enough of the gap that will be left by Texas and Oklahoma for that conference to survive? And that's not even considering the fact that some of these schools are going to be, poked out or just taken away, poached away from these other conferences. Iowa State may head to the Big Ten. TCU has been talked about heading to the Pac-12. So while none of these are certainties, and, right now we have a lot of unknown, it does seem as though the overall Big 12 and whatever happens with it is still very much in question, and we could really get to a point where it just doesn't exist.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. We're heading towards a four conference for the major players, no doubt about it.
Absolutely. And
Michael,
I think another
yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say another piece that I feel like we should talk about is the CJ Henderson trade rumors that have been swirling around. A lot of question marks about whether Henderson is going to be on the roster come opening day. And it doesn't sound like the Jaguars are looking to potentially move on from him in terms of cutting him. But there are certainly rumors out there that the Jaguars are looking to kind of hedge their losses, and they feel as though he's not going to be around on the roster come regular season to where he's going to be traded away. CJ Henderson was a top 10 pick, a very phenomenal prospect at the cornerback position, but sometimes, talent isn't all that goes into the evaluation. And I feel like it just says a lot about the draft process that, you can have all the film in the world, but there's so much that we don't know about each individual person that can kind of hold people back. And CJ Henderson, I think, has the talent to make it in the NFL, but it sounds like he's going through some stuff that's off-field issues that's kind of taking him out of it and hurting his overall chances of making a great career for himself in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, we see this time and time again. How many careers are cut short because of off the field issues? Keeps happening. It will continue to happen as well.
Absolutely. But today we're talking about some great edge rushers in a phenomenal edge rushing class. Even if you take out the Karlaftis and the Leal, there are so many enticing prospects. We're going to talk about 5 guys that I think could potentially rise up boards to start things out. And first one we're going to talk about is Preseason Amaul. So what I like about this guy is his tremendous get off. He is quick off the snap, able to get into the backfield in a hurry, helps at the point of attack, especially because with that size and athleticism, he is going to make plays. Last season, he was able to put up 5.5 sacks and 7 tackles for loss. But I think another big thing that is needed to be talked about with his game was his 8 pass deflections. Now, a lot of this wasn't getting into coverage and making great plays. It was more just getting into the backfield, getting his hands up quickly, and being able to swap balls. That is absolutely huge for him. If you're looking for some G5 guys to keep an eye on, the lower schools that maybe don't get enough love, Preseason Amaul is one of those guys because I think he's going to be someone that really starts to get love as the season comes along and will eventually be in this draft process talked about as a guy that really could be considered in that day 2 range. The next prospect we're talking about is Jordan Dominic, the defensive end for Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech, obviously, last year didn't have the greatest of seasons, but Dominic was a bright spot. 4 sacks, 8 tackles, 8.5 tackles for loss. Dominic comes in at 6'3", around 250 pounds. He has a thick frame, but I think he shows a very nice power to frame ability because of that just thick frame that he has. Being able to get into the backfield was one thing, but Dominic really was able to stop the run as well. A very disciplined player that I am really excited about. I think he moves pretty well in open space, able to make tackles in the open field. And that's something that I think is absolutely necessary for a guy that's going to be brought in. Probably, if he were to declare, he'd be talked about as a day 3 guy. But I think that's how you kind of carve out your career. And for a guy like Dominic, I think he could carve out that career where he, succeeds as a depth guy and works his way up, and then ends up to be a pretty reliable starter at the NFL level. The third guy is probably going to be someone that I am super excited about for this class, and it's Derek Hall out of Auburn. Now, at 6'3", 238 pounds, he could absolutely add some weight. He needs to. But there is just so much on film that flashes for me that has me completely sold on Hall. He has tremendous bend, tremendous ability to get around the edge. I think for what Auburn was defensively last year in terms of pass rush, they were lacking that overall killer. But Derek Hall really put it together as the season went along and showed off some tremendous ability, ended the season on a 2-sack performance against Mississippi State. From what I've seen from him, he is consistently able to get around protection and get into the backfield. I think with another season under his belt, he's going to explode in a major way. And, for the Auburn Tigers, they absolutely need a guy like this to really kind of establish their defensive pressure. And I think Derek Hall is going to be the forefront of that. The next guy we're going to talk about is Darrell Johnson, another guy that needs to put on weight, but the upside is tremendous. At 6'4", 235 pounds, he offers nice length, nice ability, but he even has some very nice strength for right now for how undersized he is. 10.5 tackles for loss, 8.5 sacks last season with an interception and a pass deflection as well. A very strong season. He is a leader of that Liberty defense. And I think, adding a little bit of weight to his frame is going to be huge for him because the strength and the overall bend is there already. I think just adding a little bit, getting him more acclimated to the physical side of being a defensive end / edge rusher will be huge for him. But Darrell Johnson is someone that I think, whether in a stand-up role or hand in the dirt, you're going to find ways to have him succeed. And I'm really excited to see where he lands in the NFL because I think he's someone that is going to be a huge steal. The last guy we're going to talk about is Boye Mafe, the edge rusher out of Michigan. And, this is someone that has tremendous size, 6'4", 265 pounds. Could have been the last episode really talked about as a potential defensive lineman. I think he has tremendous upside. He has all the athleticism that you could ask for, moves around the field very well. Really, Minnesota didn't have the star power on offense this last year that I think they needed, but the defense was very strong. He's a fifth-year senior, but he offers extremely enticing numbers in terms of athleticism. I think he's going to run high 4.5s for his 40, and at 265, that is already insane. But he's 6'4" with great marks. I think he's going to test off the charts. This is someone that really could sneak into that back half of the first round with a great combine over the course of the season. Though, if he can establish himself as a polished prospect, start to really take those strides that are necessary, then this is someone we're talking about as a top 15 pick. I mean, the mix of athleticism with the potential for production is absolutely huge. And if Mafe can do that, then this is someone that could really fly up boards. And now moving on from the sleeper edge rushers, we talk about the top 10 for this class. At number 10, we got Ameul. And, this is someone that I am extremely excited about. I think UTEP has a star in him. He had a hot streak of about 4 games, and then there were some, just kind of quiet performances. But I think with a full season under his belt, with a full opportunity to get going for the full 12 games, plus possibly another, I think UTEP is going to really help this guy get to that next level. And this is someone that should be getting love, at least a lot more than he currently has around draft circles. At number 9, we're talking about Nick Benito, another guy that kind of fits in that Hall evaluation where the frame needs to add a little bit of weight. 6'3", 238 pounds, and I don't even think he weighs in at 238. I think he's going to be around 230, but there's plenty of potential here with Benito. I think he moves around the field extremely well. He gets into the into the backfield as a pass rusher at a top tier. He's probably one of the best pure pass rushers in this class, but I have questions about him in terms of setting the edge, in terms of making that transition to the NFL. He wins with speed a lot, and I think there's a lot of similarities to a guy like Tim Williams back in the day at Alabama, where the pass rushing ability is there, but there's a lot more that goes into it for that transition to the NFL. Benito is going to be a key piece for Oklahoma's defensive success this season, and I expect him to meet expectations, if not exceed them. But as far as NFL prospect-wise, I want to see him better in the run game, and I want to see him just continue to add weight to his frame. At number 8, we got Derek Hall. Talked about him a little bit earlier, but really Auburn is going to be in for the chance at a big season. I know a lot of love has gone around to some of the other SEC schools, Georgia, Texas A&M. Obviously, Bama is the expected winner, but I think Auburn has the roster talent to be able to find a way to succeed. Derek Hall, though, is going to be a key piece of that defense in order for them to really find that success. At number 7, we got Isaiah Foskey, the edge rusher out of Notre Dame. There is so many pieces on this Notre Dame defense that is going to really draw attention, but Foskey was someone that was hard to ignore. 6'4", 257 pounds, 4.5 sacks, and 5 tackles for loss. Really put together a tremendous year last year in what was a interesting situation in terms of just getting snaps. He was kind of working a bit rotationally, so I think as the season goes on with a full-time edge rusher role, he's going to really establish himself as one of the top names in this class, and he's going to get love as a result. At number 6, we got Drake Jackson, a guy that I think is viewed a lot higher in the consensus ranks. But for me, I think there's still a lot of issues for him. I really loved his freshman tape, watching him when he was playing at about 260 pounds. He's shedded a lot of weight, though, and he just doesn't do it the same for me. I think there's still plenty of issues in his game. His freshman year, true freshman year, he had 5.5 sacks, 11.5 tackles for loss in 11 games. Came in this next year. In 6 games, he put up 2 sacks, 5.5 tackles for loss. Obviously, different opportunities for each, and the stats don't tell the whole story. But for Drake Jackson, I just feel like I liked him a lot better when he had the weight on because he worked that weight extremely well. But now he's more of a stand-up rusher. Even with the dropped weight, I don't think he really grew as a pass rusher. So for me, it's kind of a question mark. And I could see this being someone that gets that love and is mocked consistently in first round. And then just as the year goes along, there's just a drop in stock and we continue dropping his stock. And then he doesn't even have the draft stock to really declare. And right now, I have him at 6, but I feel like that's still being a little friendly for him because there's a lot of issues in his game that's going to need to improve in order for him to really maintain his status as a first round prospect or maintain his status even as one of the top edge rushers in this class. At number 5, we're going with Brenton Cox Jr., the Georgia transfer who went to Florida. Really just completely shows the flashes that you would want out of an edge rusher. Just 3.5 sacks last year, 10 tackles for loss, though. Has a great frame, 6'3", 250 pounds. I think he could add a little bit of weight, but really works extremely well. 32 pressures over the year, and I think that shows a lot just about his ability to make range. He shows nice open field tackling ability. Whether you want him in a stand-up role or down with a hand in the dirt, doesn't matter. I think he's better as a stand-up rusher, and I think this class offers plenty of 3-4 guys. But Brenton Cox, I think, has some of the upside to really fly up boards. I think he flashes consistently on tape, though, to where right now I'm still very much in on him, and I think he's someone that's going to make an impact in the NFL once that time comes. At number 4, we got Will McDonald, the 4th, out of Iowa State, the leading sacker last year with 10.5 sacks. Really an impressive edge rusher. Kind of plays with his hand in the dirt despite being undersized, 6'4", 230 pounds. Shows tremendous flexibility, body control. Obviously, he needs to add weight. I feel like he needs to add, a lot of weight. The frame is very thin, but it's extremely long. He shows off the base strength to be able to handle it. I think with Iowa State, he has a lot of work where he's almost as a 3-4 at the end. That's not going to happen at the NFL level, in my opinion. I feel like, if you want him at 4-3 defensive end, that's fine. Really, ideally, he's a 3-4 outside linebacker. But Will McDonald really just is so fun to watch for me, and he's someone that I'm really excited about for when his NFL time comes. Probably similar to Burns, where you don't necessarily need to have him add a lot of weight to where he can still find success in the NFL. Obviously, Brian Burns and Will McDonald are not the same player. I'm not making that comparison, but I think in terms of frame, it's one that I worry about less because he shows off enough as it is. At number 3, we're going with Zach Harrison, another uber athlete in this draft class that is going to really start to get love around draft front offices very early, probably earlier than a lot of NFL people that cover it on social media will be in love with him. I think right now people are already drooling over the thought of having Harrison because upside matters a lot. And you saw it with Jason Owa last year. Athleticism at the edge is absolutely huge for these front offices. For Zach Harrison, you talk about just his overall ability with Ohio State, Tyreek Smith and Zach Harrison. By the way, Tyreek Smith just barely missed out on this list. So honorable mention for him. I think he's a very talented defensive end. But Zach Harrison, 6'6", 265 pounds, flies around the field, probably going to run in the 4.5 40 range. I think there's plenty of potential here, and some of that potential needs to be unlocked, but he shows plenty enough as it is that even if we don't get the answers that we're looking for out of Harrison this year, even if we don't get the, dominant season that people are wanting out of him, we could still very easily see him go in the first round because NFL teams are willing to gamble on themselves to get that talent out of the players like this that offer tremendous ability, tremendous athleticism, and tremendous upside. And Zach Harrison offers everything about that. So look out for Harrison to be a first-round pick when the time comes. Whether or not we see that happen in terms of transcending into that player while he's at Ohio State. The number 2 edge rusher on this class is Myjai Sanders, the edge rusher out of Cincinnati, a guy that I am extremely high on, a tremendous talent, 6'5", 258 pounds, 7 sacks, 10.5 tackles for loss. Whether you want him dropping into coverage, whether you want him rushing the passer, he's able to make plays. I think there's plenty of size that could still be added for him, a little bit thin in his frame. Despite having the 260 pounds, I think he could add probably 10 more pounds and still move around the field extremely well. He is a very talented player that is going to make plays for whatever defense gets or whatever NFL defense gets him. Cincinnati obviously is filled with tremendous pieces, whether it's the cornerbacks and Gardner and Bryant or, guys like Beavers or Myjai Sanders. But, combining all that great pass rush with the great coverage is going to lead Cincinnati to having a very strong year. And, Sanders, I think, is going to get a lot of love because of that. Obviously, there's plenty of edge rushers in this class that could be mentioned, but Sanders is someone that I think is getting underrated because of all the other people that just start to get a lot of attention. I think he needs to be a bit more consistent in terms of tackling, but I really love his ability to move in open space, so I think that is going to be something that kind of gets resolved as time goes on. Just an absolute stud in my eyes, and someone that I think will probably be that round 1, round 2 type, but the versatility is absolutely huge and can't be understated. And the top edge rusher for this class, I feel like I don't even need to reveal it, and most people watching this are certain on who it is. Number 1, Kayvon Thibodeaux, the stud out of Oregon, 6'5", 250 pounds, and really just does it all. Freshman year, had 9 sacks, 14 tackles for loss. In his sophomore year, maybe a little bit of a dip in production, 3 sacks, 9.5 tackles for loss. But the overall focus was absolutely on him, and that opened up the doors for everyone else on that Oregon defensive line. Thibodeaux is an absolute stud. There's no question about it. If you're someone that's evaluating the draft and, you feel like, oh, this guy just, I don't like him. He's overrated. He's going to be a bust. Reevaluate, stick to your opinions. I'm very big on everyone having their own takes and, whatever, but reevaluate. Thibodeaux is an absolute stud. I think he's another guy that could add weight fairly easily and still maintain that dominance. Get him up to 265, 260. Shows great ability in the run game already, but the pass rush upside added in just makes him a complete monster. Even dropped into coverage, showed pretty solid versatility when needed. I think this is someone that really is going to make a difference for any team that brings him in, but at the same time, any team can bring him in and find a way to have him make a difference. If you're a team like the Giants or the Dolphins or the Patriots, where you run this hybrid scheme where you want your edge rushers to also be able to disguise and drop into coverage, Thibodeaux is going to be able to do that. So I feel like this is someone that is a universal scheme fit, and that's huge for a lot of teams, especially when you are a team that is at the bottom of the draft, really trying to figure out how to build your team up for success. Getting a guy like Thibodeaux can be added in immediately, find success. But also if the regime changes or if the defense is adapted, Thibodeaux is going to continue to be your star player. And I think that speaks volumes, and I think it doesn't get enough love as it is because, his pass rush ability already just is amazing. So it gets all the credit in the world, but I think his versatility and his just well-roundedness needs to be talked about more because he is an absolute stud and should be a top 5 pick whenever this draft comes around.
So, Michael, you already mentioned you think Jackson might fall into not being drafted. Who do you see here as having the best chance to rise up the ranks?
Right. So real quick, I just want to say for Jackson, I assume he has a little bit of a floor for how far he could fall. But at some point, he would rather just probably go back to USC and be considered a stud compared to being viewed as a day 3 pick in the NFL. So while I don't think he would go much lower than round 4 if things don't improve, I do think that there's a chance where he's just not in this draft class and waits another year. But to answer your original question, Zach Harrison probably offers the overall upside to fly up boards. Just everything you'd want out of a prospect in terms of 3rd-year junior, so he's young, great size, great speed, great strength. If he can develop as a pass rusher, if he can get that technique going, take those strides that are necessary, then obviously I think this is someone that really is going to get extremely hyped, and we could see this guy go top 10 fairly easily. I wouldn't be surprised if he went top 5 if really everything clicked for him this year.
That'd be very impressive. I mean, that's probably what he wanted to see, and good mix of talent here. You got 2 guys in the Pac-12. Of course, you got your SEC guys. 3 guys in the Pac-12, 2 guys in the SEC. Notre Dame, actually 4 guys. 2 guys from the Pac-12, 2 from the Big 12. You got 1 from the Big 10, and then you got some independents here. What conference do you think is the go-to for draft evaluators when they're looking for edge rushers?
Oh, that's tough. I'd probably have to go with the SEC for this season. Even though there's some guys that aren't draft eligible, I think they're still just filled with talent. BJ Ojulari is going to be a guy next year. Ali Gay has that upside that could potentially get some love. There's guys like Trayvon Walker, Kingsley Nagbury. There's just guys all over the field for SEC. Adam Anderson's another guy that gets a lot of love that I think could very well make some major strides this year. It's just the SEC is going to reign supreme for a lot of these positions, and I think edge is no different. Guys like Brenton Cox and Derek Hall, probably I'm a little bit higher on compared to the consensus, but there's just so much talent all throughout this field that it's just SEC all the way for me.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of the answer for a lot of questions here. What, if you're not the SEC, you're any other conference, what's kind of your recruiting pitch, at this point? Obviously, if you're in the Big 12, I guess you could probably just say, hey, Texas and Oklahoma are leaving, come here. You got a chance to go undefeated and be in a college football playoff. I think that's the way they'd spin it. But, if you're in the Pac-12, what's kind of your pitch there? I mean, because the Big 10, you're probably saying, well, we're always in the championship. We look at our head-to-head versus the SEC in bowl games. But, how would you formulate a pitch? ACC, they're probably saying we got the national champs here. But, going conference per conference here, how are you – if you're recruiting these positions here, because a lot of that's going to be going on now anyway, what kind of your pitch going to be to convince somebody not to go to the SEC?
Yeah, so I mean, for Pac-12, I think a lot of it is going to be just trying to convince guys that the West Coast is where you want to be, especially if you're a team like USC or UCLA. You're telling them all about the Los Angeles lifestyle, and I think that's a major selling point, especially now with NIL deals. We're going to see a lot of kind of old school style markets where the big cities, Los Angeles, Chicago, New York, Texas, where the big markets are, is where a lot of people are going to have the most opportunity for money. So that's probably the big selling point for guys on the West Coast, whether you're the Pac-12, Mountain West, whatever. You're saying, look, the West Coast is a huge opportunity for making a name for yourself. There is tremendous brand opportunities out here. And I think, Pac-12 obviously still has enough notoriety to where, a good season gets you into playoffs as long as you're the one that comes out on top. For schools like the Big 10, I think you're kind of selling them on just, the history of a lot of these programs. Ohio State, Michigan, Nebraska even. There's just so much history for a lot of these schools that are going to try to be sold on them. I think the Big 10 is still very talented. I think there's still plenty of opportunity, especially on the basketball side of things. They're still probably arguably the top conference between them and the ACC. So really what you're trying to get, though, if talking about it from a football perspective, is just trying to sell location, trying to sell the idea of the history of the program. For the Big 10, if you're a school that's not Ohio State, not Michigan, let's say you're Illinois, and you're saying, look, I know the SEC has a few schools offering you, and this is this mega conference, but come to Illinois. It's really just going to come down to how you can sell them on getting the opportunity to be there, be a player, and why they would succeed in your system. And, that's kind of always been the case, but I think there is definitely a smaller market of opportunity for some of these schools now because the opportunity to go to the SEC or the opportunity to maybe go to some of these bigger schools that might miss out on some of these talents that are going to the SEC is going to be a lot harder on some of these smaller big conference schools.
No doubt about it.
So real quick before we hop off here, I think there are some edge rushers that need to be talked about. ZTF out of Washington, Zion Tupu Olafatu, I believe is his name, is, or at least pronunciation, is someone that I'm extremely excited about if he can get back and healthy. Coach Jimmy Lake said that he was going to play this season. We will see just in terms of when that is, how well he's able to play in this season and just what he's able to do with the ruptured Achilles. Obviously, big question marks on him. Talked about Adam Anderson a little bit earlier, but still very much needs to be mentioned. A very nice pass rusher that I think has plenty of ability, but I think there's just question marks about his overall frame, just overall ability to be a complete defensive end or outside linebacker. And, I think that comes with it. Guys like Kingsley and Nagbury, just consistent players that I think have great upside, but there's question marks for them. There's a lot of guys in this class that if you are looking for pieces, Adisa Isaac out of Penn State, Tyreek Smith out of Ohio State, Ali Gay out of LSU. There are pieces all over the country that I think have plenty of upside. And really just something that if you're looking for an edge rusher in this class, the answers are probably going to start coming in as the season goes along. There's going to be some major boomers that just blow up in terms of draft stock across this entire process that will sort of fill out this draft class, probably shake up everyone's rankings. This top 10 will probably be completely changed from now to the end of the season when I'm doing my final evaluations. And really, it's for good reason. Even guys like Xavier Thomas, who may be disappointed a little bit in their earlier season, really just, I think, have plenty of potential to make that next step. There's also some slept on guys that maybe aren't big boom type players, but still have plenty of upside with Cameron Thomas, Chris Allen out of Alabama, someone that I think has plenty of upside. Sam Williams has some off-field question marks that'll probably keep him as a day 3 guy, but I think he still has plenty of upside and ability. Terrence Lang, O'Shawn Mathis. I think there's guys all over this class that are going to really start to capture the attention of draftniks across the world. And, as the season gets going, I think we're going to see a lot of transparency start to take place. But I think it's important to remind everyone that just because there is potential doesn't mean that that potential is necessarily going to be solved in a season. We aren't going to find out that everyone with upside just automatically unlocks it in their final year of college ball and now they've established their stock. A lot of these guys are still going to go into the NFL with huge question marks. And guys like Zach Harrison, guys like Brenton Cox, guys like Nolan Smith out of Georgia, there's plenty of upside, but there's also plenty of question marks. And while they could very well be very strong edge rushers at the college football level, I think there's still plenty of question marks about what's going to happen for the NFL transition. And they'll have to solve those answers, and we'll try to answer those questions best as possible through evaluation of their film. But at the same time, you never know. So that's something to keep an eye on, and this edge rushing class is going to be exciting to keep an eye on over the course of the season. But ultimately, that is all we have for you here on Destination Draft Day. We want to thank our very big fan, GS12345 Kill 48, for giving us an opportunity to be famous. We appreciate you. We want to thank everyone who tuned in for the show today and LandryFootball.com for the opportunity to talk about NFL draft with all the fellow nerds that are interested. We'll see you guys next Monday because there's no episode this Friday to talk about linebackers. But until then, take care and we'll see you.